Happy Spooky Month, everybody. Hey guys, Caleb here from CDBS Studios, and welcome to October, everybody. It is officially Spooky Month, which means it's time to get into the Halloween spirit with spooky horror movies and horror video games that creep us out, and it's always just so fun. And I decided to spend the first little part of this October replaying a series of games that you probably know by now if you've read the title of this video. Five Nights at Freddy's is a series I feel very passionately about, as I was part of that prime original era of the original games and theorizing about them and all of that kind of creepy nature of that when those games first released by Scott Cawthon. And I have very passionate feelings when it comes to the FNAF franchise. And I decided to replay them this Halloween just in the essence of preparing myself for the movie that for some reason is coming out in December for some reason. Like, I don't know why they're doing that, but I digress. Today, I'm deciding to rank all 14 FNAF games. Of course, I want to stress really quickly what we're covering in this video. We're covering the main series FNAF games. All the games from FNAF 1 all the way up to Secret of the Mimic. And I also decided to extend this list a little bit to include FNAF World and FNAF AR, which, even though the Wikipedia article lists them as spin-off games, let's all be real, they're part of the main series. Like, I'm not going to hear it any other way. I did, however, decide that I'm not going to include the other spin-off games, which means those like Freddy and Space games that were created for like charity streams, the like 5 laps at Freddy's. I'm not including any of the books, the movies, none of that stuff. This is strictly the 14 mainline FNAF games, and that is what we're ranking in today's video. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and figure out what's the best FNAF game and which game is FNAF AR. Oh crap, did I just accidentally spoil the bottom slot on this list? Oh my, do I have a bottom slot ranking for you. Sorry, but I kind of already spoiled it. FNAF AR is the worst FNAF game, and I'm not going to hear it any other way. This game is honestly awful. This game, if you're completely unaware of what it is, which I'm not going to blame you for, this was a mobile FNAF game where the premise was that that animatronics would get shipped to your home and you would have to fight them off with this like shock mechanic, and the gameplay is just terrible. Like, there's no scare factor. It's like one of the most boring FNAF games I've ever had the pleasure of sitting through. And it's also just a game that was an excuse for them to make hundreds of variants of famous characters by just reskinning them. Like, we now have Chocolate Bonnie, Liberty Chica, and like an 8-bit baby for some reason. Like, if you actually buy the FNAF character encyclopedia, like 75% of it is literally just the different reskinned characters from FNAF AR, and I'm not even joking about that fact. This game is just really bad, and the only reasons that people even talk about it now is, funnily enough, this game can actually dox you. A couple YouTubers found that out the hard way when they played it on stream, and this game completely doxed your location because it's got to know where to send the animatronics, am I right? And this game was so bad that they actually have now shut it down. Like, there is no way to play this game anymore, as it's been taken off the App Store and they shut down the server, so you literally cannot play it. In order to refresh myself on this game for this video, I had to go back in Markiplier's channel to watch some videos on it, because I literally cannot play this FNAF game to refresh myself like I can with every other game. The only reason other reason this game is even talked about at all is because this game actually included some specific emails that you could find from a character called Ness, which was supposed to tie into Security Breach with Vanessa, but at this point that story is now completely changed from what it was originally supposed to be in Steelwool's FNAF franchise. So at this point, there's no even point to play this game to get those emails. So what does this game literally have? This game is awful, and I'm not going to hear it any other way. This is the worst FNAF game. You cannot convince me otherwise. Alright, so now we're going up in a huge leap in quality from the bottom slot to the next game. And the next game is, FNAF World. Yeah, nice to see you again too, my old painfully average friend. Look, this game is constantly looked at as the black sheep of the FNAF franchise, as it's a completely different tone to the entire rest of the series. And at many points, this game feels like it's a fan game, and I don't mean to insult the fan games by saying that. And it's just, it has very few things about it that I actually like. And let's be honest, it doesn't rank any higher. I think you all know that. And like I mentioned in the intro, I actually purposefully extended this video's roster from 12 games to 14 to include FNAF World and AR, and they're both the bottom slots. Like, I did not intend that when I went into this video. I just want you guys to know that. FNAF World's a fine game. It's not really bad. I mean, it's kind of like the Cars 2 of the FNAF franchise for me, where I wouldn't say that I hate this game, but there definitely is way better games. And let's be honest, FNAF World giving it number 13 is a courtesy, and it's only higher because FNAF AR is actually terrible. So let's just move on with the list and actually talk about the really, really good FNAF games. Alrighty, at number 12, I have FNAF Sister Location. And this game is a fine enough addition to the franchise, as I do really like the animatronic design for this game, as it's a little more sleek and it's really colorful, and I do really like the Funtime animatronics. I mean, they have a lot of personality, which I really enjoy. Like, there's very distinct personalities between Ballora, Baby, and all of them, which is very, very nice to see in the game. But the thing that makes this game so weird to me is every other FNAF game builds on this idea that they're going to teach you something new every single night, and then eventually you're going to be forced to put all your skills together for the final night. Like in FNAF 1, which I don't want to spoil too much about that game, you start the game with just Bonnie and Chica active, then they introduce Foxy, then they introduce Freddy, and then it's all gun-ho for the final night. So they do that. In Sister Location, you're facing a bunch of random mini games, like you have to sneak through Ballora Gallery without getting seen by her. You have to do this circuit breaker puzzle to escape Funtime Freddy. You have to use a flasher to get through Funtime Auditorium to get to a breaker, to get to another room. And every single one of these games, you play once, and then it's never part of again. The game makes you think you're going to do something multiple times because you go through Foxy's auditorium twice, but the second time around, Foxy's not active, so there's no challenge. So, like, there's no point. Like, this game is just basically a series of random mini games, which I'll admit I like the random mini games. There's a lot of fun to go about them with, but I wish that I would get to do them more, as it feels really jarring as I do one night where I'm doing one set of mini games, and then the game ceases to be relevant for the rest of the runtime, which is kind of weird. I'd argue that this is kind of also the game where the lore of FNAF started to go a little off the rails, as it kind of stopped being about a haunted pizzeria, and now we got this whole scientist experiment place that we're exploring. We started introducing all the Afton backstory in this game, and it just kind of really bloats the lore and makes it start to get a little confusing, even though this is probably the easiest game to solve lore-wise. This game is fine. Like I mentioned, it's definitely a higher quality than the FNAF world, but at the same time, I can't really justify putting any higher, because I would have loved for it to be more than just a series of random mini games that I play once. So it's fine. It's a good game, but I can't justify putting any higher than number 12. I'm sorry, FNAF Such a Location fans. At number 11, I have FNAF 3. And this is a very interesting, very weird entry in the FNAF series, as this game has not a lot happening during it, which kind of in a way makes the game easy and not that scary, as this game shrunk down the roster very heavily from the previous two games, and now it's only Springtrap you're facing. And it kind of makes the game kind of weird, because it's basically you just luring Springtrap around the facility, as you occasionally get jump scared by these phantom animatronics, which is just, they're not super scary after a while. Like, you kind of lose the scare factor about them. And honestly, this game has a thing about it that I'm not super big on. I'm not the hugest fan of the mini games in this, as if you're unaware, in order to get the true ending for this game, you have to complete these like 8-bit mini games, but to unlock them, you have to do these weird puzzles in the scary part of the game. Like, you have to like click these tiles on the wall to unlock a mini game, and it like just feels weird that they put them in the scary part instead of other games where they like section them between the nights, or they have special things you have to do to get the mini games, as it's like this one's like in the scary part. So it feels like if you're going for the if you're going for the like true ending, you're like not really focusing on Springtrap, you're more focusing on these mini games, which is just kind of weird. I'm not the hugest fan of FNAF 3. I do think it has some quality elements. I do kind of like Springtrap's design. I think it's kind of fun. I like the whole aesthetic of Fazbear Frights as a location, but overall, this is definitely one of those FNAF games I don't really find myself replaying all too often. And while I think there's good elements in this game, I definitely can say that I'm not a huge fan of a lot of things that kind of refrain me from putting it in the top 10. So unfortunately, FNAF 3 is at number 11, but it does have at least some quality elements that prevent it from being any lower on the list. And going right from FNAF 3, I go to number 10 at FNAF 2. And this is, again, where the games kind of started to get more complicated, which makes sense, of course, for a sequel. You want to go bigger and better, as this game expanded and has like way more animatronics to deal with. And by extent, it also means that the animatronics, you kind of start to lose what makes the other games fancy. Because I'll admit that I mentioned I'm not the hugest fan of Sister Location. I loved that each of the animatronics has their own feel to them, and it makes them enjoyable to like see in the game. FNAF 1's animatronic has personality. Even FNAF 3 has personality behind its animatronics. FNAF 2 is just so much is going on between the toy animatronics, the Wizards, and all the other side characters like Balloon Boy and the Puppet, which kind of makes it feel like there's way too much going on screen. I do like that this game did add some fun new mechanics. Of course, the music box has become iconic in the FNAF franchise ever since this game. The Freddy mask is first introduced here, which is kind of fun. And there's a lot of interesting elements about FNAF 2. Of course, they made the pizzeria bigger, so there's a little bit more strategy when it comes to the stuff. And it's fine. Another thing that makes this game kind of interesting is this is also when the lore started to get complicated. No, sorry, I lied. This is kind of the last FNAF game where the lore is kind of it's a little more complicated in this game than it is in the first game, but at the same time, we haven't gotten to the point in the FNAF franchise at this point where the lore goes completely off the deep end, and it's kind of like, what is this franchise even trying to be about? So I like FNAF 2. It's got a lot of enjoyable elements, but it definitely could have been a lot better, and there have been way better FNAF sequels since this one, so I can't put this one any higher, but I will say this, playing this game actually made me even more excited for FNAF Movie 2 later this Christmas. So for what it's worth, this game might also be higher because of that excitement. So we'll see about that movie when we get to December. At number 9, I have FNAF Security Breach, the Ruin DLC specifically. Yes, I'm deciding to count the DLC separate from the base game because, I mean, especially like in Ruin's case, it kind of basically is its own separate game. It's just weirdly a DLC to Security Breach. And this is a fun little DLC that has a lot of things that basically couldn't be more different from the base game. Like, playing this game after playing Security Breach is such a tonal whiplash because, like, there's barely anything that's the same between these two except for, like, the location, pretty much. This is a fun little DLC that has a lot of enjoyable elements. I will admit I'm not the hugest fan of the linear nature of this game. I think it kind of limits the exploration that made FNAF Security Breach so much fun. The story in this game is a little confusing as this game is trying to course correct from the screw up that was Security Breach's story, but it also hasn't fully, I think, figured out how it wanted to repaint that story fully. And I mean, at the same time, we're talking about FNAF, so the story being confusing, I guess, is just inescapable with this franchise. This is a fun game that I definitely like this DLC, and the fact that it's also free if you bought Security Breach, which means that you don't have to go out of your way to buy this game, which I think is kind of nice, especially because you're not getting a ton new out of this DLC that you can't get in the base game. This DLC is fine. It has a lot of things I love about it, but at the same time, I can't really say it's one of my favorite FNAF experiences I've ever had the pleasure of sitting through, so. At number 8, I have Ultimate Custom Night, and this is probably one of the weirdest entries in this whole list besides like FNAF World, as this game was like a fun little add-on to Pizzeria Simulator, which, because at the time, Pizzeria Simulator was supposed to be the end of the FNAF franchise, so this game is kind of like the epilogue in a sense, where basically it takes all the animatronics, or like 95% of the animatronics from across the series and puts them in one ultimate custom survival night, which is really fun. It actually is a pretty fun game that has a lot of free choice to it. You can even choose the office, which resembles different places in the franchise, which I think is a really fun idea. And this game can actually be as difficult as you choose. Like with most FNAF games, it's kind of hard to, you can't really choose your difficulty because it's like it just gets harder every night. This game you can fully choose, and there's even some fun things where you kind of can make the game your own, as you kind of can come up with your own little challenges. There's challenges pre-built for you. You can try to survive different combinations of animatronics, which is kind of fun. But I think the thing that keeps me from putting this game any higher is this game, to me personally, can get kind of boring, as especially with certain aspects, as over after a while you kind of start to realize there's not too much variety with these animatronic like there is in the other FNAF games, and it kind of makes the replay value kind of limiting in this game, especially because like especially the secret cutscenes and stuff you can only unlock once. So I mean, this game is fine, it's fun, and it definitely was a really nice add-on to what at the time was the ending of FNAF, but at the same time, there is still better in this franchise, and I won't say I hate this game, but at the same time, there's definitely better games. So, at number 7, I have FNAF Help Wanted 2. And I don't want to really spoil too much about my thoughts on the original Help Wanted game, but basically this game is a really nice follow-up to the ideas of the first. This game is a lot more minigame heavy, focusing on a lot more minigames. Like we have a dart shooting minigame, we have a shooting like log flume ride. We have other little mini games in here, like you're making food for different creatures and things like that. Like this game is a lot more like mini game based than like what the original game was, which I don't want to spoil too much of my thoughts there, which you'll understand when we get to the Help Wanted section of this video. I do like this game as it really is the like first step that Steelwool took to kind of really course correct after the screw up that was Security Breach's story. And it kind of makes for having some fun lore developments in this game that I thought was really enjoyable. I love discovering the whole Vanny mask mechanic was fun. I loved playing Princess Quest in 3D. That was a lot of fun. And there definitely is a lot of really enjoyable elements of FNAF Help Wanted 2. And it definitely is more proof that Steelwool can handle the FNAF franchise well when they're given the time and effort to do so. But at the same time, this game is low mainly as a result that I think the minigames can get a little boring, as this is one of those games where they basically did the thing where there's like five levels to the minigame. So like you complete the Fizzy Faz game once, then you have to do it 4 more times. It just gets more difficult every time, which can get a little boring, especially when there's certain minigames that I'm not a huge fan of, especially like the dart game and stuff kind of gets boring quickly. But, it's fine enough, and if the games maybe were like a little shorter, maybe if there was like 3 max, maybe I would have enjoyed this a little more. But at the same time, this is a fun game. I enjoyed the mini games for what they were. I just wish that maybe they shortened them by like 2 or 3 stages or something. It's fine though. I actually enjoy this game a lot more. I mean, you can tell by it being a number 7, right? At number 6, I have FNAF Security Breach, and I'm not going to apologize for how high I have this game ranked, as this game, I think the most enjoyable part of it is just how broken it is. Like, this game is such a failure when it comes to storytelling and gameplay, but I think the broken nature of it just makes the game so fun because you really can play this game any way you want. Like, you want to play this game where you don't use Freddy at all, there's a way to do it. If you want to play this game without picking up any items, there's a way to do it. If you want to play this game where like you do some dumb challenge, that you can find a way to make it work, which is like the fun part of this whole thing. Like this game is so busted that the most enjoyable element of it is breaking it, which I can't believe I'm saying that about this game. And I think that's also why I can't put this game too high, because like this game is such a failure when it came to the storytelling. Like the FNAF games already were so vague and with their stories that they kind of wanted you to solve the story for yourself. That's kind of why FNAF became so popular. But this game fails for a couple different reasons, mainly because Scott Cawthon didn't tell Steelwool apparently what he wanted the story of this game to be. And you can feel it at times where there's so many ideas in this game that contradict itself, and especially after some of the new developments that Steelwool's made to the story going forward and things like Ruin and even Secret of the Mimic. Like you really can tell that this game just it does not know what its own story wants to be. The gameplay is kind of basic. The This game is so broken as well. Like frame rate can drop. Everything can just randomly unload for some reason when you go through a door. The animatronics can sometimes be very busted. And I'll also admit, this game gets really easy the longer it goes on for, as this game has a really bad power scale problem where usually the FNAF games get harder as they go on because they either up the animatronics aggressiveness, they add way too much things going on, like in like certain games like FNAF 1, you're dealing with like 5 different things on night 5 instead of like the 2 things on night 1. But like this game especially, Gregory gets so many overpowered items by the end of this game that basically the animatronics are no issue for you, because like by the time you reach like the end of this game, you have Freddy who can instantly get you out of any animatronic situation. You've got the camera that can flash animatronics. You've got like so many other upgrades that basically makes like this game so easy in its later hours, which I feel like should not be the case with a game like this. Also, the game's called Five Nights at Freddy's Steel Wool, not like 6 hours at Freddy's. I don't know what happened here. Look, FNAF Security Breach is a failure for so many reasons, but like, I guess more so than FNAF World, this is my version of Cars 2 for the FNAF franchise, where like, yes, Security Breach is bad, and I understand, but like, I can't bring myself to put it any lower, because like, it's one of the FNAF games I play the most, because like, it's so busted to the point where I have fun playing it, because like, I can literally beat the game in like 5 minutes if I really wanted to, which is pretty funny in the long run, which is pretty cool, I think. So yeah, that's why FNAF Security Breach is a number 6. I'm not going to apologize for how high I have this game ranked. I understand if you think it's the worst FNAF game, but like, I can't put it any lower than number 6. I'm sorry. Bringing us into the top 5 is Secret of the Mimic, our newest FNAF game. And this game is a jumble of a lot of mechanics I actually don't like from the previous games we've covered on this list, but done right. This game takes the idea of the open world of Security Breach's map and does it so well. MCM is such a fun place to explore, and I love that they kind of did the thing, they kind of merged Security Breach and Ruin, where this game can be very linear at parts, but by the end of the game, it's basically an open map for you to explore, which I think is such a fun way to do that mechanic, which I think is handled a whole lot better in this game than it was in the previous games. I also just love the Mimic as a villain, as we don't have many animatronics inhabiting the MCM building, but the Mimic makes for such a fun gimmick and actually improves on the fact that I mentioned in FNAF 3, I didn't like that there was only one animatronic patrolling the facility, but this game does that right, with the Mimic being able to transform into any suit you can find throughout the game, to the point where like you don't even know if the Mimic's in the room with you until maybe it's too late, which I think is a really fun way to do it. This game just is also really fun, especially in the storytelling department. Like, you can really feel in this game that Steel Wool is trying to clean up the lore that kind of got screwed up with Security Breach and a couple of the other games, which I really do appreciate. And overall, this game is a huge improvement over pretty much almost every other Steel Wool FNAF game, which is such a delight for this kind of game. And like I've said before, maybe it's recency bias talking, but this was such a fun game to play through. And honestly, I enjoyed it so much. It's my 5th favorite FNAF game. So you know what? I'll take that from a Steel Wool FNAF game, to be honest. And the only reason it just doesn't go any higher is there are certain portions of the game that are a little bit for me. Like, there's some portions of the game that are either a little difficult or a little bit kind of boring. I don't like other certain aspects of the game's story, but overall, this is a really fun experience that honestly I would totally recommend if you have decided to skip this game. It was a real treat. At number 4, I have Pizzeria Simulator. And this game is really fun for a lot of other reasons. I like that this game is actually split into 2 parts. The first part is the pizzeria simulator part, where you're building a pizzeria, you're putting all these items in there, you can build stages, you can put animatronics on them, you can add mini games, which I think is one of the improvements I love over FNAF 3, where FNAF 3, like I mentioned, put the mini games in the scary section of the game. This game just has it where the mini games are actually in the pizzeria building part, which I think makes that a lot better, because that's supposed to be the fun part of the game. And then you also get into the night shift part of the game, which is the scary part, which is a real fun section as you're surviving the animatronics, trying to complete these tasks. And this game's story is so great, with the ending of this game probably being my favorite in any FNAF game. Like, that ending with Henry's speech is so powerful, and to the point where literally I like, almost like how people say Avengers Endgame is the end of the MCU. This game is the end of FNAF for me, because like that speech is just like the perfect send off to the FNAF franchise. This is just such a fun game that has a lot of enjoyable elements and is a more than worthwhile conclusion to the FNAF franchise if Steelwool decided not to continue it. I love Pizzeria Simulator. It's not everybody's favorite FNAF game, but I definitely enjoy it a lot. I will admit I do enjoy the simulator part a little bit more than the scary part in this game, which is kind of like building my pizzeria a lot more than trying to survive in it. But you know, it's fun. I really enjoy Pizza Sim, and it's the good elements of Pizzeria Simulator are enough to cancel out the negative elements and earn it the number 4 spot on our list. So this is a really fun FNAF game. I'd recommend playing it if you've never had the joy to play it, because it really just is that fun of a game. Look, I know in the past we kind of all like to give Steelwool a bunch of crap because their FNAF games kind of weren't up to the stakes that we expected from the previous FNAF games. But without further ado, number 3 for me is FNAF Help Wanted, the first Steelwool FNAF game, and they knocked it out of the park instantly. I found this game really enjoyable. This was the first time, of course, they did the FNAF VR experience, and this game was a lot of fun in VR, from the main appeal that you can't escape the horror in this game. Like other FNAF games, you can easily just turn away from the screen. You can switch tabs or whatever. You can close the phone app. This game, you're basically living in the pizzeria. You're living in the horror. And when the jump scares come, they're right in your face. There's no escaping it, which I think just makes the game even more terrifying and makes it a lot of fun. I like that this game did a thing where they did include like the mini games and stuff, but they also have like recreations of FNAF 1, 2, 3 that you can play through, which is a lot of fun. And it just makes for such a really fun game. And it does have those occasional lore issues because of Steelwool not fully understanding what they were going to do with the lore of their early games, but it makes for a great fun. And I do also like the Curse of Dreadbird DLC. Yes, I'm combining Help Wanted and its DLC, even though I counted Security Breach's DLC separate. I don't care if you want to make a video ranking them separate, go ahead and do it, but I'm putting them together because like there's not enough to talk about Dreadbear to warrant a full extra slot on this ranking list. I just really love FNAF Help Wanted. It's one of my favorite FNAF games, and it just is such a blast to play. But unfortunately, there's just 2 other FNAF games that I think are just critically better than this game. Even though FNAF Help Wanted might be my favorite FNAF game, I think there's just 2 more that I would much rather replay, especially because after a while, the VR headset can get you a little nauseated, especially if you play for a long time. So that's really the only downside I have with this game, where I can't really play it for hours on end before I have to be like, all right, I got to sit down and take this headset off for a little bit because I'm really just not feeling it for a second. So that's really the only real downside of FNAF Help Wanted. But to be honest, that's like my only real negative with this entire game. So if that's the only negative and it comes from more or less the hardware than the game itself, then that's how you know you made a good game. So number 3 goes to Help Wanted. It just unfortunately gets beat by 2 other FNAF games that I dislike a little bit better. I know, right? Kind of shocking. At number 2, I have the original FNAF game. Yeah, surprisingly, the OG FNAF game is still surprisingly one of the best ones. This game just was so fun because it was long before the lore decided to go off the deep end, when the game was just basically a simple story about there's these haunted animatronics in a pizzeria that you have to survive. You can get slight lore hints at looking at these notes on the wall, which basically just tells you that 5 kids were murdered at the pizzeria. Their souls are possessing the animatronics. That's all you need to know. And it works for what it is. Like, this game didn't need to have some huge expansive lore because it literally was just, you're in a haunted restaurant. You don't need anything more. The gameplay of this game is pretty simple. It's close the doors, check the cameras, preserve your power. It's pretty simple gameplay, and pretty much so simple, in fact, that everybody knows about it, and multiple games have even copied it. I really love the creepy atmosphere of this game, as you really do feel at points that you're in a haunted pizzeria, and it's actually sometimes terrifying. And this game is just really, really fun. And yeah, surprisingly, the first FNAF game is still probably one of the best ones. It's number 2 on my list personally because there's just one FNAF game I like just a little bit better, but I still love the OG FNAF game. It's where this entire franchise started, and you know you did well, where even after all this time, if your first game is still one of the best, it just means that you struck gold with that original, and it just makes for such a fun experience. And if it, like, I feel like everybody is now just a rite of passage. You have to play at least FNAF 1 at least once in your life. It's like a rite of passage at this point. But it's only beaten by one more FNAF game, and I feel like at this point you might be able to figure out which one it is. Alrighty, the number 1 coveted spot has gotta go to FNAF 4. This game is a surprising sequel for me that manages to outdo the OG. Some of the things I really enjoy about this game so much is that I love that this time it's set in a bedroom, which is such a tone shift from the dark, dingy pizzerias we're familiar with from this franchise. But the bedroom, I think, makes the game even more scary because it's realistic this time. Like, you're fighting for your life in, like, your own bedroom almost, which is more scary because, like, the pizzerias, like, you could probably spend your whole life not having any connection to those pizzerias because you've never gone to a pizzeria like that in your life. Everyone has a bedroom. Like, this game is realistic for that point. And I do really love the Crying Child minigames. This game did what I wish FNAF 3 did, where they sectioned out the minigames in between each of the nights. You slowly unlock the Crying Child lore as you go through the game. This game has the famous meme attached to it about the bite of 87, which we all quote now. The only real downside this game does have is that the sound in this game is a little problematic. Like, they have this weird scaling issue with the sound where, like, the animatronic jump scares are so much louder than the game itself. So if you're someone who plays with headphones, like some of us, when we do a strategy, we like to lower our sound so we can hear the breathing, which is the main mechanic of this game. But, like, when you don't hear it right and the sound comes on, it's, like, so loud. I mean, sorry, because we raise the volume to hear the breathing, and when the animatronic jumps you, like, it can literally burn your ears, which kind of is mad. But other than that, this game is an easy pick for me for first place, as it's literally the FNAF game that I find the most realistic, the one that I think does barely anything wrong except the sound issues, and it's also got epic memes attached to it. So you know what? FNAF 4 is gotta be my pick for the top FNAF game of them all. To the point where if there's someone who hasn't played a FNAF game at all, I honestly wouldn't recommend this be their first, because I feel like they're just going to be disappointed by every other one in comparison. Of course, get them to play the OG, but then maybe if they don't, like, if you have a friend that you want to try to get into the FNAF franchise, have them play the OG. If they don't like it, have them try FNAF 2 and FNAF 3 because they're a little bit different. And then have them try FNAF 4 because if they're not won over by FNAF 4, maybe it's time to give up on the franchise. I don't know if the others are going to convince them. Let's be real here. So there you guys have it. My ranking of all 14 mainline FNAF games. I'm sorry if your favorite spinoff was not in this game, like about Freddy in Space or any of those games. Also, I didn't mention this in the intro, but I also decided not to include any of the Freddy Fazbear, like, fanverse games, like the Flumpties and the Candies games. If you guys want me to cover those in a fully separate video, maybe I can do that next Halloween, but this was a pretty fun video and actually got me to revisit some games that I'm really passionate about from my childhood. And even playing these games got me even more excited for that movie, which I still don't understand why it's releasing at Christmas when it's a scary movie, but whatever, Blumhouse. But yeah, this list was probably one of my favorites that I've made, as it was really fun to replay some of these games that I have really loved. And I want to know what's your ranking. How would you rank the 14 mainline FNAF games? And if that's a little bit too difficult for you, just give me what your top 3 is and what your bottom 3 is. And if you want to go ahead and include some of the games that I didn't include on the list, go ahead and do that, because I'm curious to see what everyone else's opinions are. But without further ado, thank you guys all very much for watching this video, and I hope to see you guys all in the next one. Bye, guys!